Welcome back everyone. My name is Sagar and we are back here with another video. So in our previous video, we just learned how we can create our Android application. So now in this video, we will be taking the next step into our journey of Android application development. So here in this video, we will learn about how we can create multi-screen apps using multiple activities. Also, we will learn about intents and also how we can use Logcat and also some other libraries. Also with this, we will be learning about Android activity lifecycle. So without making any further ado, let's get started. So first, let me just tell you what we did in our previous video. So here inside our project, we just created this application and we just learned about all these folders, and inside here in our Java folder, we had this main activity. So inside this main activity, we have not tried any logic. We just created a simple UI, and let me just control and left click here. So here you can see this was our UI. So inside this constraint layout, we already learned about this thing, and inside this we have an image view and also this text view, and our layout was something like this. So here you can see we just learned about all these tags. What is this ID, what is this layout width and height, and what is this text also. Watch out our previous video if you want to learn about this basic layout. We also learned about our Android manifest file and also how our Android operating system works with this manifest file to start our application. So if you want to learn about all of these things, then go watch out our previous video. So now here in this video, we have to work with multiple activities. So now we will just create our another activity. So here you can see activity is nothing but just a class. So our class, and then we can just write the name with this convention. So our activity name, and after that this activity keyword. So this is the basic convention that we have to follow when we are creating our activities, and our activity should extend this app compat activity. So our class, if we are creating normal class, then we should extend this app compat activity, and then this will be considered as our activity. So after this, after creating our normal Kotlin file, we have to override this onCreate method of our app compat activity. And inside this, first of all, you can see there are two lines, super.onCreate, and that means we have to call the onCreate function of our super class, and that is your app compat activity. And after this line, we have this thing. So here we are just binding our view to our activity, binding our layout. So this is the layout that our activity will show. So how can we create our activity? So what you can do is inside this folder, you can just right click and new. So here you can just create new Kotlin file. So here what I will do, I will just call it main activity 2 and press enter. So here this is the first method, but it is not the recommended way, because this is just a very long way to do this thing. I will also show you a shortcut using which you can just create your activity. So here I will just extend this app compat activity, and this will be a constructor call. So inside this block, now I can just press Ctrl O, and here you can see all the methods that we can access here. So I have to now get on create. So I will just write it here, on create. So here you can see this is the method that we want to access, on create, and I will just click here and OK. So here inside this method, okay, this is not the method. So what I can do is I can remove this second parameter, and also from here. So this is the method now, and what I can do, I can just also remove this unnecessary import, and here I can also set my view, set content view. You can also follow this thing, and you can just do the exact same thing here. So what you can do is you have to now create a new layout. So r dot layout dot or new layout. So suppose I am also creating a activity main 2 layout. So here now this will be our new activity, and we also have to set our content view here. But remember that thing in our previous video, I already told you that whenever we are creating any app component, we also have to define that thing in our apps manifest file. So Android manifest file. So if we are creating any activity, so activity is also one of our important app component. So we also have to define this thing inside of our Android manifest file. So here you can see in using this block, we can just define our activity here. So I can just write it here. So if you are following this thing, so this is very unnecessary thing that we are doing here. So we don't have to do any of this thing. This is a very long way. So what you can do instead is you don't need to even create this activity. You can just press here and delete it. So I will just show you a short method here. So what you can do is you can just press on this folder, on this package, you can just right click and new. So at the bottom here, you can see there are multiple options: activity, fragment, folder, services. and you know what is a service now. Also we can just create our widgets and also compose. So what we have to create here, so we have to create our activity. So what kind of activity? So there are these presets and we have to follow here this empty activity. So I will just click on this thing, and here now we have to define our activity name. So this will be by default my activity 2, and we also have to generate a layout file. So what is the name of our layout file? That will be our activity main 2. And will this be our launcher activity? No, we don't have to select this thing, and that is because our main activity first will be our launcher activity, and this will be inside this folder, and this will be in Kotlin language. So I will just click on this finish button. Okay, you may or may not see this thing, but I will just click here, and you will see our Gradle sync is in process, and you can see there is our activity that we were just creating manually, and here it is now generated. So here is our same class, and that is here our main activity too. And now we also have our layout. So you can just control and left click here. So you will just see this is our empty layout. And after that, this activity will be also added to our Android manifest file. You can just confirm it from here. So you can see this is our main activity, and this is our main activity too. And you can see here there is no intent filter for this second activity. So you can just see this only have a metadata and not an intent filter. This first activity have an intent filter because our operating system have to just open this. Okay, so you can just refer to our previous video if you want to understand about this thing also. So after this, now we just created our second activity. So now let me just create some things inside this layout. So what I will do is I will just use here a text view. So we already learned about this text view. What is the width of our text view? I will just say wrap content. And what is the height? I will also say wrap content. So now I have to define a text here, and it will be, I will just say this is our second activity. And after that, now we can also define the size. So what is the size of this text view? Text size equal to, now we have to define it in SP. So it will be 24 SP, and we will also learn about what is this SP and how it is different from DP and pixels. So after this line, I can just also define here a style. So text style, and it will be bold or italic. I will just say bold, and it should be at the center, right? So I will just say, now you can see we are using here a constraint layout. So that means I have to define here constraints, or what you can do is you can just go to this design tab, and here inside this layout, you can just see I can just define this thing. So by pressing on this plus button, you can see I am defining the constraint, and the text will be fixed at this position. But if I want to align my text at center, so what I will do is I will just pass here some values, and here it will be 0, and also here it will be 0. And now you can see our text is at center, and here you can see our constraints are automatically set here. So either you can just write this thing from your code, or you can just use the design tab. This is also a very helpful thing. You can just access some views from here. You can just drop and down this thing, or what you can do is you can just code it by yourself. So I prefer using this view, and you will just get comfortable writing code here. So this is now our second activity, and we have to write some logic to go from our first activity to second activity. So first of all, what our user will see, now let me just check. So our user is gonna see this image and this text over this image, right? So let me just run and see in the application. So now our application is installing, and now you can see our user is gonna see this layout. So this is our activity main layout. So this is our first layout, and what we have to do now, we have to navigate from this main activity to our main activity 2. So we have to write some logic here, and after that logic we have to navigate from this view, this layout, to this layout. So we have to see this thing that will just show us this is the second activity, and you can just add here some image view or something else. So how can we do this thing? How can we just navigate from our main activity from this view to this second view? So what we can do is we can just create a button inside our activity main layout, and after clicking on that button, we will just navigate to our second activity. And I will also tell you how and what logic we have to write to navigate from one activity to another. So first of all, let me just create a button here. So I will just show you the layout here also. So this is our layout. At the end of this text view, I will just create a button. So you can just write here this thing, button, and press enter. So what is the width of our button? That is wrap content, and height is also wrap content. So now you can see this purple thing, this is our button here, and after that we have to define here some text in our button. So what is the text in our button? I will just say button, or we can just see here navigate, so that we can just click on this button and navigate to our second activity layout. So after this we have to define some constraints for this button. So what we can do is we can just define here the constraint of right to right of our parent and left to left of parent. So this will be at the center, and after that it should be at the bottom. So this is the normal UI design, that a button should be at the bottom. Okay, so bottom to bottom of parent, and that's it. I can now just use this backslash and it will be done. So it is at the very bottom, and suppose I have to add some padding here at the bottom. So padding or margin, I can just add here a margin. So don't worry if you don't understand this thing, what is a padding, what is a margin. We will just understand all of these things when we were learning about our UI. So there will be a dedicated video for our UI in Android. So now we have to define here a margin bottom, and after that I can just define here 10 dp. So that means the margin at bottom is equal to 10 dp. So you can just see it just lift up, and I can just define here more margin at the bottom. You can just see this is here now margin, that means the gap from bottom equal to 10 dp. Okay, and this will be our button. So I also have to define here id, so that I can access this button using this id in our activity. So if you want to access any view or any layout inside of your Kotlin file, then you have to define id for that view. So here I will define here button, or I can just use here the convention, that is navigation button, navigation, and this b should be capital now. So this is our navigation button, and how can I access this thing in our main activity? So now here you can see we are just defining the id as navigation button, and now we can access this view, this button view inside of our activity using find view by id method. So what we can do, we can just use this find view by id. So this is the method provided by this Android framework, and now we have to define our id. So inside this parenthesis, now I have to write here id. So what is the id? So I have to write here a resource. So this will be an integer value, r dot id dot, and what is the name of this id? So the name is navigation button, and I have to define it here. So you can just see we just defined here this thing, and inside this diamond operator, inside these corner braces, we have to define what is the type of this view that this id have. So here it is a type of button view, so I have to define here this is a button. Okay, and I can now just click on this alt and enter. So it will just import this thing, and I have to save this thing now. So well button view equal to, so you can just see this thing now. Okay, what is the error it is showing here? So it is saying here layout activity main does not contain a declaration with id equal to navigation button, and you can see we are just defining it here inside of our main activity layout. Okay, and I think this error is just redundant, so just ignore this thing. So here using this we are just accessing this button inside of our Kotlin file. So what we can do is we have to also define that thing, that what will happen when we press on this button. So now we have to define here on click listener. So using this button view, you can just see this is a type of button. Okay, and this is not null. So button view dot set on click listener, you can just see we have to define this method here. So I can just press here, and now I have to define what will happen when I click on this button. So what you can do is you can just use here a log message, or you can just define here a toast. So what is a log message? So we will just learn about all type of log messages and logcat in this video itself, and you can just see here at the bottom we have this logcat. So this will just so for a very brief, this will just show you the status of all your activities, all the things that are going in your application. So you can just see this thing, that this thing is going, duration is this, flag is this. So you don't have to understand all of these things. We will just learn about the important things and how we can just use logcat. We will just learn about that. So after that, what is a toast message? Toast message is nothing, just a pop-up in your application. So here when we click on this button, what we have to do? We have to navigate from this activity to this main activity too. So how can we do this? So before that, we have to first confirm that this press is working. So we have to now confirm that when we are pressing on this button, this functionality should work. So what we can do is we can just change this text. So first of all, So first of all, what I will do, I will just comment this thing here, and you can just see this is our hello world text. And let me just increase the size here. Text size equal to 24 sp, and it should be also bold. So I will just define here the style, text style equal to bold. So now you can see the text is here hello world. And after that, what will happen when we click on this button? So for confirming our click on the button, what we can do is we can just change this text. So how can we change it? So as we are accessing this button, we have to access this text. So this text have this id hello text. So what we can do is I can just create another value. This will be our hello text. You can just define here any variable name, and I am just doing this thing. Find view by id. This is a text view, and inside this I have to define the id hello text, and that's it. So here from these two values I am accessing the views in my layout. So after this, what I am doing, using this button, I am setting a on click listener. So when I am clicking on button, so what will happen? So what should happen? So I can just change my text. So what I can do is when I am pressing on this button, so inside this block, what I can do is hello text dot text. So I am just setting the text here. So what is the new value of our text? So I can just say Android is cool. Okay, so this will be our new text when I am clicking on the button. So when I am clicking on this navigate button, so our text will just change. And let me just confirm this thing. So I will just read in my application. So here you can see our application is launched successfully, and here first of all we are seeing this hello world text, and when I'm clicking on this navigate button, and you can just see this functionality is working very fine. And here now our text is changed, and you can see Android is cool. And what happened when we are closing this application? So let me just open it again. So I am searching here my application, and here I will open it. So here you can see our setting is default. So that means when I'm closing my application and reopening it, so it will just show me my default text, and that is here. You can just see my default text is this hello world. So you also have to remember this thing, that when our application is dying, so when I'm destroying my application, so after restarting my application will just get all the default settings. So it will just show me hello world text, and after that again when I'm clicking this navigate button, so it will just show me Android is cool. But we don't have to do here this thing. We don't have to change the text. We have to, I will just write here a comment. Let me just close this emulator view. So we have to navigate to activity 2. So this is the thing that we have to do on our button press. Okay, so we will just learn about that. So how can we just navigate from one activity to another activity using our intents? So there is an intent class that we will learn about. So here we have to create an object of intent class, and intent means intention. So first of all, here we have to define what is the intention of this activity. When I am clicking on this button, so I am defining a new intention, and that intention will say that I have to navigate from this activity to my another activity. So I have to define it here inside this intent object. So I will just create here an object, well, intent. So this is my object name, and that will be type of intent. And you can see I have to use this android.content. And what is the value of this thing? So I have to define here a new intent. So using this constructor call, I can just create a new intent. So here I have to now define two things, that from where I have to move where. So from this activity I have to move to this second activity dot colon colon class, because this is a Java class. That means we have to use this thing, and after that I have to write here dot Java. And now you can see this is a valid thing. That means from this activity I have to move to my second activity, and after that I have to now just start this intent. So start activity, and I have to pass here an intent, and that will be our intent object. And that's it. So this is the only thing that we have to do if we want to navigate from one activity to another. So what will happen? Let me just show you the flow. So first of all, our user is gonna see this layout, and after that we are also defining here a button. So what we have to do with this button? So we have to write our logic in our main activity. So this is the Kotlin file that is corresponding to our layout. So what is the logic that we have to write here? That will just navigate us from this activity to our next activity. So what will happen? So let me just remove this thing, hello text. We don't need this anymore. So I will just comment it. So what we have to do, we have to just press on this navigate button and we have to navigate to our second activity. So for this, first of all, we have to get this view inside of our activity, inside of our Kotlin class. So for getting a view inside of our file, then what we have to do, we have to find a view by its ID. So for every view, if we want to access it in our Kotlin file or our Java file, then we have to define an ID for that view. So here you can see we are defining ID for our button also, and that ID is navigation button. So I can just access this ID using this r.id.navigation button. So using this r, this is our resource, and ID, then after that we will just get all the IDs, and this is our ID that we want to access. So using this find view by ID function, I can just access this ID and this will just return me a view. So this will be a button. So you can just see this button view will be our button object, and you can just write here button only, and I will also write here button. So using this syntax, I am just accessing this button, and after that what we have to do with the button, we have to click on this. So we will just set a on click listener. So this is the method that we have to use here. So now inside this block, this set on click listener, I have to define my logic that what will happen when I am clicking on this button. So this thing will happen when I am clicking on the button. And what is this thing? So this is the intention, this is the intent object. And what is the intent? So intent is to navigate from this activity to my main activity 2, which is a Java file. Okay. So this is our intention that we are defining, and after that I can just start my activity, starting my second activity. Okay. And what will happen? So when I'm pressing on this navigate button, I can just move to my second activity and I will just see this text. So this should be the expected output, and let me just try this. So now you can see our application is running, and here is the first screen. This is our main activity, and when I'm clicking on this navigate button, so here you can see this is our second activity. So after that, what will happen when I'm pressing on this back button? So you can see we are back to our main activity, and that is here our back stack. So what is happening here? So we are maintaining a back stack. So what is a stack? It is a data structure, something like this, when we have to put one book over the other. So this is something like a stack, and we are maintaining a back stack. So that means when we are creating one activity, so this activity will be added to our stack. So this is our main activity 1. And after that, when I'm clicking on this navigate button, so I'm creating this intent and I'm starting new activity. So here what is happening? So I am just starting my new activity. So what will happen? I am creating my second activity and this will be added to my stack. So this is my back stack. Okay. And that means this second activity is on the top of my first activity, and that means when I am pressing on this back button, so what will happen? So when I am pressing on this back button, so this will just remove my second activity from this back stack, and I can just now see I am back to my first activity. So this is also a very important concept that you have to understand. And what if you just want to change the behavior of your application? That means what will happen? So first of all, when I'm starting my first activity, so this will be added to my stack, and when I'm starting using this intent, my second activity, so this will be also added. But suppose before starting this activity, I have to remove the first activity from my back stack. So this should be something like this. So first of all, my first activity was in the back stack, and I have to now start my second activity. So this is now here. This is my second activity that is to be started. So suppose in some case you want this thing, that my first activity should be removed from the back stack and only this activity should be here. So what you can do is, after starting this second activity, you can just write here finish, and this is a function, so you have to write it this. So this is the function that will just delete, that will just remove our first activity from our back stack. So now this will be the case. So when I'm pressing back button again, so this will just exit from my application. So all my activities will be removed from my back stack and I will just exit from my application. Okay. So let me now just run this case. So first of all, when I'm clicking on this navigate button, so I will be at my second activity, and when I'm pressing back button, so I will just exit my app. So that means what this finish button is doing, so this is just destroying my first activity. So let me just follow this thing. So this is now our first activity, and this is working fine. And when I'm clicking on this navigate, so you can see now I am at my second activity. So according to our code, we are just starting this activity and we are at our second activity, and after that we are calling this finish. So our first activity should be out of our back stack, and that means only this second activity is here, and when I am pressing the back button, so this should be also removed and we are out of our application. So when I am pressing the back button, you can just see we are out of our application, and that is the expected behavior. So this finish function is also very important when you are working with this intents. So you also have to know about this thing, and we don't have to use it here. So just remember this thing, that if you want to start any other activity from one activity, you have to define here an intention. And this is not the only case for our activities. We can just do this thing for our all Android components. So either that can be our services or content provider, we can just define our intention. So this intent is a very important thing, and we should understand this thing very clearly. And after that, this activity lifecycle is very important, that we have to know when our activity is out of our backstack, and when we are quitting our application. So we should also know about these things. So these are the two important things that we will learn now. First of all, our intents, and how many type of intents do we have. And after this intent, we will just learn about our activity lifecycle. So this finish method can also play an important role in our activity lifecycle, and we will also learn about that. So now we will just learn what is an intent and intent filter. So what is an intent? Intent means intention, and we can just create our intent using our intent class. But what it is used for? So an intent is a messaging object that we can use to request an action from our another app component. So we just created our one intent, and what was our request? Our request was to start an activity. So activity was just another app component. So that was the action that we were performing using our intent object. So that was the first thing that we can do using our intents, that is to start our activity. So starting an activity. So as you know, an activity represents a single screen in your app. So you can just start a new instance of an activity by passing an intent to our start activity method. So as you can also see here, we are using this start activity method. So this is our action, and we are passing here our intent object. So here this intent describe the activity to start and carries some necessary data. So we can also pass some data from this activity to our another activity. And I will just show you this thing, that using this intent object. So using this, I can just do this, put extra. So I can just put some key value pairs here, and I can just get that in our second activity. So we will just do that thing. We will just pass our object from this class to another class. We will just get some data from user, and we will pass that to our second activity. And there can be also different type of activities. Suppose you are opening a camera, so a camera can be also an activity, and this will just return us a result. So if you want to receive a result from the activity when it finishes, so we can just call this method start activity, and after that for result. This function is deprecated, that means it is not maintained anymore, but this will just work fine. So if you want to learn more about this, then you can just check official documentation. So when I'm using this method instead of this, so that means I'm starting an activity for result. So that means the activity I'm starting will just give me a result. So that means I can just pass my intent here, and I will just comment this. So here it is showing an error, and let me just see, it also take an integer value, and that means it is our request code. So we can just pass here our request code, that this is our request code 10, and we are requesting. So this is nothing, just a unique key that you can use to get your result. So after that, if you want to get result, so when I'm calling this method, so that means I am requesting. So this is our action, that means I'm starting an activity to get a result back. So how can we get our result back? So you can just get a function here. So I will just press Ctrl O, and here you can just see on activity result, and you can just see this is the method that we want to work on. So I will just press OK, and you can just override this method. So this is provided by our Android framework. So inside this method, you can just get this data. So this data will hold the value that our activity will return. So we just started an activity, and that can just return us a result. So this will be our data, that is our result. So you don't have to focus on this thing. This is a little complex thing, and here today we don't have to work on that thing. So we will just do that some another day, but I can just do this here. So we were starting an activity, and that will not return a result to us. So after this was the first task of our intents, and after that our intent can also start a service. So starting a service. So what are services? We just learnt about that in our previous videos. So a service is our Android component that perform operation in the background without using a user interface. So we can just start a service using a job scheduler object. You can just see android.app.job. Using this, you can just start your service, but this is not the task of this video, so we are not gonna follow this thing here. So corresponding to this start activity, we also have this start service. You can just see this service, and this also takes an intent object. So this is the same thing. If you want to do, then you can just check the official documentation. And after this was our second component. So using this intent, we can also do, we can deliver a broadcast. So delivering a broadcast. So using intent, we can also do this thing. So what is a broadcast? Broadcast is nothing but you can just consider it as a message that any app can receive. So the system delivers various broadcasts from system events, such as when the system boots up or the device starts charging. So you can deliver a broadcast to other apps by passing a intent. So we can just use this method, send broadcast, and this takes an intent object. So we can just deliver a broadcast to our another application using this method. And all of these operations are only possible because of this intent object. So after this, these are the tasks that intent can do. And after that, let me just talk about types of intent. So there are two types of intent. First one is explicit, and the second one is implicit intent. Let me just write here intent. So these are the two type of intent that we have. And what do you mean by an explicit intent? So an explicit intent specify which application will satisfy the intent by supplying either the target app's package name or a fully qualified component class name. So you will typically use an explicit intent to start a component in your own app because you know the class name for the activity you want to start, right? For example, you might start an activity within your app in response to a user action, right? Like we were doing here. So here what we were doing is we were starting an activity, and that is because we know the location of this activity, right? So we are passing here the fully qualified class name, and here we are passing the context. So starting one activity from another activity inside your application is just the example of explicit intent. So starting a service using the start service method is also an explicit intent, right? So then what are these implicit intents? So these implicit intents do not name a specific component, but instead declare a general action to perform, which allow a component from another app to handle it. So what you can do using this implicit intent is you can just access your phone camera. So that will be an example of implicit intent because our camera app is handling that intent, right? So another example can be if you want to show the user a location on the map. So you can just start an implicit intent to request that another capable app to show a specified location on the app. Suppose you are using the Google Maps. So you can just pass an intent to Google Map application, and you can just request the map application to show you some specified location in the map. So that will be because of this implicit intent. So I hope now you understand what are these type of intent. So let me just show you how the flow goes. So when we are talking about explicit or even implicit intent, so let me just show you how it works. So suppose this is our activity A. So this is our first activity, and after that we are creating an intent and we are calling a specific method, suppose start activity method or start services method. So this will be an explicit intent, so we are calling here a method, okay, and this will be an intent using an intent. So this will be our intention, okay. And after that what this intent will do, it will just let our operating system know about this. So there is our Android operating system, there is your Android device. So this intent will just trigger the operating system that there is a new intention. So then what our operating system will do, it will just check the manifest file that the component should be present in your manifest file. And that is why we also have to define our another activity, another components in our manifest file. So our operating system will check the manifest file and it will just create the intent if the activity or any other component is present in the manifest. So it will, this operating system OS will also create an intent object, and this intent will just trigger the onCreate. So onCreate is a Android lifecycle method, lifecycle callback method of an activity. So suppose here we are only talking about activity. So onCreate method of an activity will be called, and we will just see what is this onCreate. So for a brief, suppose the activity is now created. So our new activity, suppose this is our B activity, it is now created here. So this is the flow that goes here. So I hope now you understand that we will start from our A activity and we will pass an intent to our operating system, and further our operating system will do the rest of work. It will just create another intent and start our activity, and we can also access this intent in our second activity. So suppose you are passing some data here. So suppose this is our data that you are passing using this intent. So this intent will pass the data to our operating system, and our operating system will bind the data and pass it to the this intent. So we can just access the intent data from this B activity. So I will just show you how from this destination activity you can just access this data. So we will also pass the data from A activity from to B activity. Okay. So this will be the flow, and I hope now you understand this thing. So now let me just tell you how you can create an intent. So I will write here building an intent. So an intent object carries information that the Android system uses to determine which component to start, such as the exact component name or component category that should receive the intent. So suppose in this example, we know that this will be an activity, and inside this intent, we know we are passing an activity, and that is their class of Java. And we can also define the information that the receiver component uses in order to properly perform the action, such as the action to take, or the data to act upon. So what are these whole information that are contained in an intent? So first of all, our component name. You can what you can do is you can just control and left click here, and you can just see this intent class. So you can just pass multiple things inside your intent. So what you can do is you can just define this component name. So there are these two methods, get component and set component, and we are using just these shortcuts of Kotlin that we can just access this component as a field. So this is the name of the component to be started, and this is totally optional. So after this, we can just define here our action. So after this action, like you want to open your camera or you want to access your maps, so this will be the action. So suppose you want to view something from your gallery, so this will be also considered as an action. So there are multiple type of action. What you can do is you can just write here intent dot action. You can just see view locus, quick view, and after that we also have send to, send multiple. Also there are multiple more methods, more actions that you can just see here. So this is nothing but a string value. You can also define it by yourself if you know this thing. So what you can do is com dot example dot action dot, suppose you want to do anything, suppose you want to time travel, and if there is some application that is time travel, so you can just access this. So this is nothing but this is our package name. Okay. And after that, in these intents, you can also pass the data. Using this dot data, I can just get data, or I can also set data, but this is not the method that we are going to use to pass our data. So this is the URI that references the data to be acted on. When creating a data, it's often important to specify the type of data, that is its MIME type, in addition to the URI. For example, an activity that's able to display images probably won't be able to play an audio file, right? So we have to specify the MIME type of the data. That will help our Android operating system to find the best component to receive our application. So what we can do is we can just throw a request. So we can just request our operating system that we want to open a camera, and there can be multiple apps that support camera, right? But it is not necessary that every app that is supporting camera should also support video recording. So we have to specifically define that we have to either record a video or we have to only click a picture. So that is the thing we have to define in our MIME type. Okay. And after this data, we also have this category. You can just see categories. So a string containing additional information about the kind of component that should handle the intent. Any number of category description can be placed in an intent, but most intents do not require a category. So there are some example of categories. Suppose I am writing here, this should be in capital, intent dot categories, category browsable, suppose. So what is this? So when I am using this, that means the target activity allow itself to be started by a web browser to display some data referenced by a link, right? Such as it can be your URL or email message, right? This is showing here an error, and that is because this is our get method. After that, we have one more category, that is your category launcher. You can see here there are multiple type of category that you can just go through. So why this category launcher? And that is because the activity is the initial activity of a task and is listed as the system application launcher, like our main activity. So this is our launcher. Okay. And if we want to start some another application, that is the launcher, so we can just pass this category. After this category, we also have one more thing, that is your extras. So this is the thing that we are going to use to pass our data. So this is a key value pair that carry additional information required to accomplish the required action. Just as some action use particular kind of data URIs, some actions can be particular extras. So we can just pass our data using the put extra method. Put extra, you can see here. So we have to pass here a key value pair, name and value. So the name should be any string value, and we can just pass any kind of data that is valid. We can also pass here a bundle value, and I will also tell you what is a bundle. So a good example for this can be, suppose you are opening an email app. So when you are sending an email, you want to pass some data, some default value, or your title. So you can do is you can create an application that will just take the input of your email subject and email summary. So you can just put them here and start a implicit intent. So we will just start an implicit intent after putting our data, and we can just open our email app and send an email. So now let me just show you the example. So this was the example of our explicit intent. That means we are using this constructor of our intent class, and that takes two values. First of all, this is our context, and this should be our class because this is an explicit intent. So this was the example of our explicit intent, and we can also write here an implicit intent. So let me just show you an example here. So suppose I want to write an intent that will just send me the text. So I can just write here some random text, and I can just share it with another apps. So what I will do, I will just create an intent that will just tell our operating system to send my text to another application. So what our operating system will do, so it will just check all the apps that support sending our text. So let me just show this thing. So I will just create an intent that will be send intent, and this will be of type intent, but we don't have to specify. So I will just create an intent object, and you can just call here a specific method that is here apply. So this is a lambda expression. We just learned about this thing in our very first video, that was our Kotlin basics. So using this apply block, we can just pass multiple things to the object that this constructor is gonna create. So we can just get a ready-made object after this apply block. So what we have to do, we have to pass here an action. So first of all, this represent our intent object, and what we can do is we can just pass here an action. So you can either write here intent.action, and this is your intent. So this will just represent our action. So this will just represent our intent, and we don't have to write here this dot action. So this will just the same thing. So I can just write here action, and what kind of action? It is a send action. So intent dot action send. So this is the send type of action, and after that I have to now put some extra values. And what is the value? So first of all, I have to pass here a key. So it will be intent dot extra text. So this is just some key that I am using here. And after that, what is the value? So you can just write here any message. So suppose, hi, I am Sagar. So this is the text that I want to send. And after that, I now have to define here the type. So this is the type of our plain text. So how can I represent that? This is a type of plain text. So how can I write this thing? So there is some special thing that you have to write here, text, this backslash plain. So now this is the type that our operating system will check. So our Android operating system will check all the applications that support this type of action in them. So first of all, we will just start an activity, and our operating system will find all the applications that support this type, that can support sending this data to some user. So after that, I can just write here some exception handling, because this can also throw an exception. Suppose there is no application that support this thing, but this is not possible. So I can just write here start activity, and I can just pass this send intent. So now let me just try this thing here. So here you can see we are in my application, and this method, this intent will be invoked when I am pressing the button. So let me just press it here, and now you can see a new screen is pop up here, and this is showing all the functions, all the application in my Android that support this type. So you can just see this is a very amazing thing that we are doing here with this intent object. So if I am choosing this messaging, and let me just write it here. So we will just pass a value, hi, I am Sagar. And after that, if you also want your application to receive something, to receive some particular type of intent, then you can just define that thing inside your Android manifest file. So you can just do this thing here. So you have to define here an intent filter, that what kind of action and what kind of category that this activity will support. So if another activity is sending some request, sending some action, something like this, so there can be a chance that your application should also be in options if you have some intent filter like this. So I hope after this now you have a good understanding about these intents. Before ending this topic, now let me just tell you about one more thing, that there is a special type of intent, that is your pending intent. So let me just write here, well, pending intent, and this is of type pending intent. So what is this? A pending intent object is a wrapper around an intent object. The primary purpose of this pending intent is to grant permission to a foreign application to use the contained intent as if it were executed from your own processes. So we will be not working with this, but that is just the thing that I wanted to tell you, that something like this also exists. And after that, let me just get back to our topic. So now we have to pass our data from one activity to another, and for that let me just open my first activity, so main activity. And here inside this activity we will just create a string value, and we will pass that string value to our second activity. So this is our main activity too, and we will just receive the string value from our intent, and we will just show that in our UI. So let me just create a text view here. So I will just give it a ID. So I will just name this my second text view. So either you can follow here the snake case naming convention, or you can just follow this thing. This is caterpillar naming convention. So this is our second text view, and let me just get the reference of this view here. So well, our text view, this is a type of text view, and I will just get this by find view by ID method. And now I have to pass here the ID. So what is the ID? R dot ID dot, this is our second text view. So you can just write here control and left click here, and you can see we are here. So this is our main activity too, and I think this is again our Android Studio error, but you can just ignore this thing. So we are accessing the text view here, and we have to update the text view. And what will be the updated value? So what we will do here, we will just send the string value from this main activity to our main activity too, and we will just get the data here. So we will just get the string value here, and we will update our text view. So text view dot, you can just use this thing, this text is now a field. So text equal to our new data. I can just write here text, and we can just create here a value new text, and we don't know what will be the new text values, and we have to get that from our intent that we are receiving from our main activity. So what is the flow? So we already saw this thing, that this is the flow of our intent. So first of all, A will just create an intent, and this will just call our start activity. So we are creating an intent, and we are passing here some data. Suppose we are passing here this string value. So this string will be passed to our this intent, and this intent will send the data to our operating system, and after that our operating system will just create our new intent. So this string data will be passed to this intent now, and after that this intent is now passed to this B. So using this intent, we are just creating this application, and this data is here inside this intent. So what we can do is we can just access this intent, and using this intent we can just get the data that this intent is holding. So we have to just access the intent that is creating this B activity. So we have to get the data from which B activity is created. What we will do inside this main activity too, we can just do here, we can just get an intent, this is our intent object, and we can just call here get intent method. So using this we can just access this intent. So we are accessing this intent, and we can now just get this data. So this is the method that we have to call, or you can just use this Kotlin syntax. So using this intent, we can just get the intent that is opening this main activity too. So this is a very handy thing in Kotlin, that we don't have to create this intent object explicitly, we just have to use this here. So intent dot, we just get some extra, get string extra. So you know that we are passing our data using our put extra method, so we have to put our extra value here before starting our activity. So we have to create here new data, and that will be equal to, suppose I am sending here some string value, sending this to B, and after that now I have to put this data inside of this intent. So what I can do is intent dot put extra, and now I have to pass some key. So what will be the key? I will just write here key. So this is not a good practice, that you are using your key something like this. You should use here constant value, and you can just define your another Kotlin file to to just store all your constants, but here we have to only use one key. So we can just write here key, or we can just write here some unique key, suppose string underscore key. Let me just write here all small letters, string underscore key. So this will be our key, and using this key we can just access the data inside our main activity too. And now I have to pass the data first, so I can just pass my new data here. So this is our string value that I am passing here, and after this intent, after putting my data here, I am starting the activity. So that means I am at this step. So here I am in activity B, and I am passing some data inside my intent, and I am starting the activity. So I just did this thing here. So after starting my activity, our operating system will know that I want to start this B activity. So our operating system will just create an intent that will hold our data. So we just have to get this data now. So now inside this second activity, I am just getting this intent. So I know where is this intent, and now I have to get the data. So what I can do is I can just pass here the key, and the value of key is this string key. So inside this get string extra method, so now I know that this is a string value that I want to get. So I can just pass here, this is a string key, because obviously every key will be a string, and the value that I want to get is also a string. So that's why I have to use this get string method. If you are passing an integer value, or suppose you are passing a boolean value, so you can just pass here this get boolean extra. But here I am passing the string value, so get string extra. So this is a key that will be always string, and what is the value? Our value is also a string. So that is why I am using here this get string extra, and after this new text will be the value that we are sending from here, and that is here this value. So I can just update my UI to this. So now inside my second activity, I will always see this thing that we are sending here. So I will always see this sending this to B, and note this, because when we are creating our activity, so on create is when we are creating our activity. So we will just learn about activity lifecycle. So when we are creating our activity, so we are setting the text value. So that means we are not gonna see this UI. So we are not gonna see this text. We are gonna see the text that we are getting from our intent. So I hope now you understand this, and let me just run the project. So now here is our application, and I can just click on this navigate, and I will just start my second activity with this text. So let me just confirm, and you can see we are seeing this text. So that means we are passing our data successfully. So now we will just take one step ahead, and we are gonna get the data from our user. So that means we have to use here EditText. So EditText means that is a text field. Like you can just double press the shift button, and you will just open a prompt here. So you can see this is also EditText, or you can say this is our text field. So we are gonna use this in our Android app. So this is our another UI component that we are gonna use, and we have to use it in our activity main layout. So I will be here, and so now instead of this text view, we have to use here edit text. And after that, what we will do, we will just get the text that the user enter in this edit text, and after that we will just pass the text that the user enter to our second activity. So you can see in this line, instead of writing here this string fixed value, we will just get the data from our user using a edit text field. So instead of this text view, I will just write here edit text. So you can just see this thing, and here in our layout you can just see there is an underline here inside this text hello world. So first of all, I will just change this ID. So this will be our edit text, and the width should be match parent, and I will also add some padding here, padding start 10 dp, and I will also give it a padding end also 10 dp, so that it will just look good. And now inside our layout you can just see this is our whole edit text, and here you can see our hello world text is aligned at left side of our edit text. So what you can do is you can also provide here the gravity. So this is our gravity tag, and here you can just choose these options. So I will just choose center. So you can see our text is at center now, and this is our hello text that will be automatically filled in our edit text. So we have to first remove it when we are using in our application. So we don't want this to be filled already. So I will just remove this text, and our edit text should be empty now. So what I can do is I can just pass here a hint. So hint means that there will be some low opacity string, that will just suggest me what to add. So I will just write here add some string here. So you can see this is something like this, and now I can just alter all these things, that this text size or this text style, so it should be normal here, and that's it. This is our constraint, and you can also design this edit text by yourself. So you have to design this in a separate drawable file. So what you can do is you can also provide here the background. So background will be, you can just set here some image. I think I don't have a good image for this, so I can just set here a color. No, that is not looking good, so I will just leave it as it is. So this is a good enough thing. So what a user will do, it will just enter some data here, and when we are clicking on navigate button, so we'll just pass the enter data in our main activity too. So first of all, now we have to get the data from this edit text, so that means we have to access it here. So instead of this, let me just write here edit text, and this will be of type edit text, and equal to find view by id r dot id dot edit text. And after this, I can just get the data from this edit text. So how can we get? So I can just write here new data will be edit text dot. So here inside this, I can just write here text, so it will just get me this get text method, and after that dot to string. So this should be a text, and I have to convert it into a string value, so that this will be now a string. And if I'm not doing this thing, you can see this edit text dot text value is now editable value, and I have to convert it into a string value. So dot to string. So now this value will be a string that I have entered in my edit text. So I can just pass this value in my second activity, and I will just show this thing in my second activity. I am just getting it from my intent using this key. I am getting it, and I am setting it after that. So this is a normal flow, and this is again our Android Studio error. So don't worry, let me just run this. So here either you can just define the type of this find view by id inside this diamond operator, or you can just remove this and define the type here. So this is a type of button. So now this will be not giving error. So you can see we are now getting a edit text, and by clicking here I can just get the text. So here is my keyboard, and I can just write here this is input text, and I will press back and navigate. So I should see this text here. So this is our second activity, and I am getting this text. So let me just align it at the top. So in my second activity, so what I want is I want this text to be at the top. So what I will do, I will just remove this constraint bottom to bottom up, because that is the thing that is attaching this at the center. So if I am removing this here, so my text should be at the top. So you can see now my text is at the top, and I can also define here the color, so that we can distinguish. So I will just write here some color text color. So you can just give it a color. Suppose I want to give it this color primary, and there will be now purple color. So all these colors are defined in this res values and this colors.xml. And suppose I also want the title of my activity. So in the top app bar, so in my second activity, I will just write here label, and this is my second activity. So now I will just see the label second activity, and in my first activity I will just see the label first activity. And previously, if you rewind this video, then you will see we are always saying the table label as this thing, my application. So now we are going to see for our main activity, we are going to see first activity, and for our main activity 2, we are going to see our second activity. So now let me remove this and start again. So initially this text will be empty. So if I don't want to, then I can just ignore this, or I can write here instead of this Android, I can just write here tools. So now this will be not rendered in my activity. This will be just for my convenience, and this will be not rendered in our UI. So there is a difference between writing here Android colon text and tools colon text. So you can just write here tools colon text, and this will be not shown in your UI. So let me just remove this, and we will focus on our application. So I will just write here input text, and I will just navigate. So you can see we are just getting here second activity, and this is our input text. And when I am pressing back, so from our back stack we are getting this first activity, and this is the same input. So that means we are not losing our activity. You can see if I am navigating to my second activity, so I am not seeing my first activity, right? And I know that my first activity should be present on the screen when I am pressing back. So you can see the text is also the exact same where I left it. There is a possibility that I will just lose this text and all the different UI component. So suppose there is some list in my activity that I don't want to lose, but I can lose this thing because my activity dies when I navigate to some different screen or when I'm pressing back. So when I'm pressing back, you will just see that I will just lose this input text. So I will just open my application. Okay, I will just write it here, my application. Okay, we are not getting it here, so I will just rerun it. So you can see now this time we are not getting our input text, and that is because our activity just dies. So that is also an obvious thing that when our activity dies, so we have to also clean up the things. That means our UI state will be all gone. So this was only because we were closing our application, but that is not always the case, that we are not closing our application, but still we can lose our UI. So suppose for example, if I am writing here some input text, and I am doing the same thing here. So I will press the back button and I will navigate. So it is here, and when I'm pressing back, I'm back to my activity, and input text is also here. But when I'm pressing this, so when I'm changing the configuration of my screen, so that means when I'm rotating my device, just wait a little bit, this device will just rotate, and if it is not, then you can just press on this 1:1 button, and now you can see. Okay, here we are getting the input, and let me just navigate and again rotate. And when I'm pressing back, so here my edit text is sustaining the configuration changes, but suppose I am doing something else here. So when I am clicking on the button, instead of navigating to my different activity, what I will do is I will just set this this edit text dot text equal to some value 123, suppose. So this will be a string, and this is now our editable value. So what I can do is I can just write here this. I can just write here this set text, and here I can pass the value 1 1 2 3, and I can just remove this here. So now I am setting the value here inside my edit text, and this will be done only when I'm clicking the button. So let me just check now. So now you can see, first of all, my edit text is empty, and when I'm clicking on this navigate button, so you can see 1 2 3 is here inside my edit text. But what happens when I'm rotating my device? I will just press back here and rotate it. Okay, I think we should not use here the edit text, we will just use here the simple text. So instead of this edit text, I will just create it a normal text. So this will be our text view. So I will just write here text view, and I have to remove this hint. I think I will just remove this from here, and this will be our normal edit text that don't have any value. So I can just write here tools colon text equal to some value here. So this will be not shown to our UI. So first of all, there will be no value, and after that, when I am setting the value, so this will be not edit text, this will be our text view. And let me also write here text view. So the ID of this should be also text view, text view. And after that, here inside this, inside our activity, I will write here text view, and also here I will just set the text. So text view dot. So using this dot, now I can just access the text, and I can just directly set here the value. Suppose 1 2 3. So first of all, there will be no value, and after clicking on the button, the value will be 1 2 3. And let me just see what happens on configuration changes. So if your application is launched and you are still seeing this error, then that means this is also because of our Android Studio, and you can just press on this 1-1 and you will see your application. So first of all, let me just rotate it. It should be at portrait. So first of all, you can see there is no text, and that is because we are applying here this tools.text. So we will just see the UI, we will just see this text inside of our split screen, or we can say design. But inside of our original application, we will not see any text. So we will just set the text on our button click. So let me just click, and you can see 1 2 3 is here. And what happens when I am rotating the screen? So you can see where is the text. I am just rotating the screen and my text is already gone. So let me just do it again. So you can see now 1 2 3 is here, and when I am rotating my device, okay, you can see now 1 2 3 is again gone. So what happens? Suppose I am writing some long text after pressing some buttons. Suppose I am doing some calculation. So let me just write here to edit text. Instead of this text view, let me just write here edit text, and after that I am just adding one more. So this should be edit text 1, and after that edit text 2, and the edit text 2 should be below our edit text 1. So what I will do, I will just remove this. So this edit text 2 should be at below our edit text 1. So that means constraint top to bottom of our id. So I have to give here the id edit text 1. So something like this, and now you can see this thing, and I can just remove this bottom to bottom of parent. So now this thing is valid, and I can just remove this. Okay, this is tools, so no need to remove this. I can just add here the hint. So what I will do, I will just add two values, and I will just calculate the sum. So suppose I will just write here enter first value, and after that inside this I am writing a hint of enter second value. If I am passing any hint, then I can just remove this text from here. So enter first value, enter second value, and then I can just use a text view to show the sum, or I can just do a complex calculation. So instead of edit text, I will just write here text view, and this will be here text view. So I don't have to give here the hint, and the text view should be not visible at first. So also I have to set the constraint, so bottom of edit text 2, and that's it. So instead of navigate, we are just calculating the sum. Calculate. Okay, and now inside our main activity, now we can define the logic. So first of all, we are having a button that is to calculate. So we can just change the id calculate, and I can just refer this from here. So I will copy it and paste it here. So this is our calculate button, and after that we have two edit text. So edit text 1, that is of type edit text, equal to find view by id. I will just define here the id dot edit text 1. So after this, now I will get the edit text 2. So edit text 2, and id is also edit text 2. And after that, I also have a text view. So text view will show the calculation after this both buttons. Okay, after getting both the inputs. Okay, so what I will do is when I am clicking on the button, so what will happen? So first of all, I will just calculate. So I will just write here result of calculation of first value, that is here. So I can just use here ampersand, and I will write here inside of this block. So I can just get these two value, val first value equal to edit text 1 dot, you can just see this thing text to string. So first I'm getting the first string, and after that the second value, and here inside the text, now I can just set the result. So I can just create another string, that is a result. So it will be equal to this string, and I can just pass here result. So result of calculation of first value, and that is here our first value. So I don't have to use here this block, first value and second value, I think this should not pass the screen. So second value here, I will write here equal to, and that will be sum of these two values. So I will now write here a block, first value plus second value. So this is here some logic that I have to show you, that you are writing some more logic here, and when you are configuring, when your configuration is changing, then you will just lose all your result. So let me just show you. So you can see there are no values in our edit text, and I can just add some values. So our first value is 1, and after that our second value is 2. So what is the sum of these two value? I can just calculate. So result of calculation of first value 1 and second value 1 equal to 1 1. Okay. So I think we have to get here from this second edit text. So that was just a little mistake. And I think they both are string values, so we will just concatenate them and we will not add the actual value. So what you can do instead is you can just create it to integer. So both of these values are string and you can convert them to integer if you want the actual sum. So I will just write here some value. Suppose it can be integer, it can be not. So Sagar and Malhotra, and I should also write here space after this. So calculate, and you can see result of calculation of first value Sagar and second value Malhotra is equal to Sagar Malhotra, and that is our whole calculation. But when I am changing my configuration of this phone, so I will click on this because this is slow, and you can see there is no text now, and only edit text is sustaining the configuration changing, because that is by default provided by our edit text, that it will just sustain our configuration changes. So the text inside our edit text will not be removed when we are changing our configuration, and that is because our application is dying and again creating instantly. So there will be a very short time of death for our activity and not our whole application. So our application will remain alive, but this activity will die for an instance and will be again created. So this edit text is sustaining the configuration changes, and this text is not sustaining, and that is because we are doing this on create. So when we are calling on create, our activity is creating again. So as I said, the activity is dying and again creating instantly. So that means when we are again creating our activity, we will call this on create method, and we are setting everything again. So that means we will just set our content again. So inside this activity main, we will just set the layout again, and we will just set all the default value of this text view and another things, and not for this edit text thing only. So just remember this thing, that edit text will sustain the configuration changes. So we are just setting our layout again, and that means our text view will be reset, and after that we are just getting again things, and we are just setting this on click listener again. So we can just click on this again multiple times. So this whole thing is only because of our activity lifecycle, and this is a very important topic for your interviews and also for creating good applications. So now we will just learn about our activity lifecycle, and we will see how you can improve your application by using multiple lifecycle callback methods. So now we are going to learn about activity lifecycle. So first of all, what do you mean by a lifecycle? Lifecycle means that something that will take birth and will also die, right? So the same thing will be applied to our activity. So activities are one of the main Android component. So definitely activity will also take birth. That means our activity will be created. Suppose when we are opening our application, so our activity will be created, it will be started and initialized. We have to follow all the steps, and we will just see how the actual thing works. And after that, when we are closing our application, so our activity will also die as our application is dying. So we will just also learn about that, what are the steps our activity will follow when it is dying. So this is the official cool diagram of activity lifecycle, and first let me just explain you all the things. So suppose this is your application, and as the user navigates through, out of, and back to your app, the activity instance in your app transition through different states in their life cycle. Suppose when I'm opening my application, the activity will be created. So that means it is here creation state. And suppose when I am pressing the home button, so our activity will be paused, it will be not dead instantly. So that means this is now in our pause state. And suppose when I am removing all the application from my recent tab also, and now our application will be dead, so now activity is also destroyed. So there is a class that is our activity, and this is the parent class of our app component activity that we are using to extend our main class. As you can also see here, we are here extending app compat activity, and let me just control and press here. So you will just see this is our public class, and here you can see, first of all, we are just extending this fragment activity, and let me just show you, this is a part of our activity class. This is here, this is component activity, and after that there is another one. So here you can see everything here is part of our activity class. So the activity class provide a number of callback that allow the activity to know that a state has changed, that the system is creating, stopping or resuming an activity, or destroying the process in which the activity resides. So you can just search here all the methods. So one of the method is onCreate that we are already using, that means this. So this is our onCreate method that we are overriding here. You can see this is our onCreate method. So let me close all this. So this is our lifecycle callback method. So within the lifecycle callback methods, you can declare how your activity behaves when the user leaves or re-enters the app. So what is this onCreate? OnCreate means when your activity is on the creation state. So when our activity is creating, suppose when I am opening my application, so then this time our activity is onCreate. So the activity will be creating, and it will just trigger this method, onCreate method, and whatever function I am calling here, so this will be triggered when my activity is creating. For example, if you are building a streaming video player, you might pause the video and terminate the network connection when the user switches to another app. When the user returns, you can reconnect to the network and allow the user to resume the video from the same spot. In other words, each callback allows you to perform specific method that's appropriate to a given state of change. Doing the right work at the right time and handling transition properly will make your app more robust and performant. So this was the same example that we just talked about. So when I am creating my application, so I have to write all the code that is our creation code. And suppose when I am also overriding here another method, so you can just control and O, you can just press on control and O, and you can just search here on destroy. So there is this on destroy method, and you can just override this method also, and you can just write your logic when your activity is destroying. So you have to write your appropriate code here, and this code will be automatically triggered when your application, when your activity, when your this particular activity is dying. So your application death and this activity destroy method is a totally different thing. So there is a difference when your activity is dying and when your application is completely destroyed. So I will just tell you about all the lifecycle callback methods, and you can just use your method for some specific reasons. So there are a total of 6 methods for our activity lifecycle callback, and let me just tell you about them. So first one is, as you can see here, this is our first method. Let me zoom here. So this is our first method, that is our onCreate method. So we are also overriding it here. So we have to do all these things. That means we have to set our onClick listener. We have to also set our layout in our onCreate when our activity is creating. And after that, we have this onStart, onResume, onPause, onStop, and onDestroy. And alternatively, we also have this method, onRestart. But we don't use it as much. But these 6 are our important method that we will learn. So as the user begins to leave the activity, the system calls methods to dismantle the activity. In some cases, the dismantlement is only partial. The activity still resides in memory, such as when the user switches to another application and your application is still in the background. That means in your recent app. So you can still come back to your application, and if the user returns to that activity, the activity resumes from where the user left off, as you can see here. Depending on the complexity of your activity, you probably don't need to implement all the lifecycle methods. However, it's important that you understand each one and implement those that ensure your app behaves the right way. So that means when the user is pressing home button, so you should directly don't destroy your activity. You should pause it, right? So that the user can just come back and resume from where the user left off, right? So now let me just break down all these 6 methods one by one. So first of all, we have this onCreate method, and this is the first method that we are interacting with. So you must implement this callback, which fires when the system first create the activity. So first of all, this is our creation state. That means our activity is being created, and for that our activity should be present in our Android manifest file. So on activity creation, the activity enters the created state in that onCreate method. So here you can perform some basic application startup logic that should happen only once for the entire life of the activity. So this thing will only happen once. That means we are gonna only bind the layout only one time, and when the user is pressing home button, so we will not do this thing again. So all these things are our one-time operation, right? So for some example, you can also get the data from the internet, and that should also happen only one time. So this method receives a parameter saved instant state, which is a bundle object, as you can also see here. So this is also nullable, and that object contains the activity's previous saved state. So if the activity has never existed before, then the value of this bundle object will be null. And if the activity previously existed, and suppose for some reason, like if your device have a low memory, then your operating system will just shut down your app. And suppose that was not your expected behavior, so you have to again create your activity. So then this object will be not null, and this will just hold the activity previous state. So if you want to resist that thing, that you want to get back to the previous state where you left, so that's why you have to use this line super.onCreate, and you have to pass this method here. So according to this method, if you want to restore your state, then you also have a method for this, control and O, and you can write here on restore instant state, and you can just see here this method. So we can just use this method to restore our state. Suppose you have some text here that will be just wiped out when your application is crashing. So you can just save this instant state here and inside this bundle object, and this will be not null when the activity previously existed. So you can just restore all your state here. Suppose there is some text view. So we already know what is the text view, and we can just set the text to our new value. So how can we get the new value from this bundle? So you can just use this object saved instance state, and this should be not null. Okay, here it is not. So we can just call here the method get string. So this should be a string value, as this is a text. So we can just pass here the key value. So key. So that means we should also pass the text to our saved instance state bundle, and for that we also have another method, and that is here on save instance state. Okay, you can see here this is the method. You can just select it, and this method will be called, this method will be invoked when the activity may be temporarily destroyed, and we have to save the instance state here. So we can just save the instance state here, and this will be saved in our this object, and after that we can just retrieve it here. So our system will just check when there is a saved instance state that is previously saved by using our this method. So we restore some state in our own create, while we can optionally restore other states here. Okay. So let me just remove these methods, and after this we have this on create. So let me just tell you that your activity does not reside in the created state. After the on create method finishes execution, the activity enters the started state. So after this on create method, as you can also see here, we have this on start method. So this is our created state, and this is our started state now. So after creation, our activity will just enter in the started state, and this will just call our on start method. And after this on start, we will just quickly call this on resume method. Okay. So what is this on start method? So you can just come here, and I will just override it on start. So let me just find it. So here you can see this is our on start method, and you can just select it. So when the activity enters the started state, the system invokes this callback. The onStart call makes the activity visible to the user as the app prepares for the activity to enter the foreground and become interactive. For example, this method is where the app initializes the code that maintains the UI. When the activity moves to the started state, any lifecycle aware component tied to the activity's lifecycle will receive the onStart event. So we will also learn about that thing, what is a lifecycle aware component and what are observables. These are the things that you must learn in your Android development journey, and we will also see that. So this onStart method completes very quickly, and as with the created state, the activity does not stay resident in the started state also. So once this callback finishes, the activity enters the resumed state, and the system invokes the next method, and that is here resumed state on resume. So first of all, we have the created state, and our activity will call this on create, and after that we enter in the started state, so we are just calling this on start, and after that we will quickly move to our resume state, and now we will call on resume. So let us just see this. So what is this on resume? On resume. So this is the method that we are talking about. You can just see androidx.fragment.app.fragment activity. That is the parent of this app compat activity. So when the activity enters the resume state, it comes to the foreground. And when we were talking about our on start, so we were preparing to be in the foreground, right? So that is the difference you should know. So here the system will just invoke this method when we are in the resume state. So this resume state is the state where the user interacts with your application. So now this time our application will just stay in the state until something happens to take focus away from the app. Suppose you are pressing home button, or suppose there is some call on your phone, and that time we will just lose focus and we will just leave this resume state. And another example can be, suppose your device screen is turned off, then you will also lose focus from your activity. So also remember that thing, when the activity moves to the resume state, any lifecycle aware component tied to the activity's lifecycle will receive the on resume event. So there are specifically one event for all states. So we have our created state, started state, resumed state, and our, if we are defining some lifecycle aware component, so they will just hit the on created event, on started event, or on resume event. So you can just understand this thing by yourself. So this resume state is where the lifecycle component can enable any functionality that needs to run while the component is visible and in the foreground, such as you can just start a camera preview, and that should only happen when we are on the screen. Okay, if you want to show any animation to the user, you can also start this here. And whenever an interruptive event occurs, the activity enters the pause state, so when we are losing our focus. So after this on resume state, our activity will be running and we will be kept in the resume state. But after we lose focus, that means our another activity comes in the foreground, or when we are losing our focus from the main activity. So then what will happen? We will enter the on pause. So here we will be on the pause state, and after that we will just call on pause. So this is a very simple thing about our activity lifecycle. And whenever we are entering the pause state, then that doesn't mean that we will just destroy our activity. So that can also mean we can also resume. So suppose for example, if you are just turning your screen off, then that means we will just enter this pause state and we will just call on pause. But after that you can also return to the activity. So then that time you will just again be in the resume state and you will definitely again call this on resume. Okay, so that means for this on resume method, there is a corresponding method that is on pause. So if you are starting your animation in the on resume, so you should stop it in the on pause method. Okay, so after this on resume, now let me just tell you about this on pause method. So what is this on pause? So the system calls this method as the first indication that the user is leaving your screen. So that means our after this on pause, after this we will enter pause state, and that means our user can also delete, our user can destroy our application, or it can also return to our application. So there may be a possibility that he may be closing our application. So there is a possibility. So this is the first indication. Okay, so it represents that our activity is no longer in the foreground. That means there is no focus anymore in our activity. So you can use this on pause method to pause or adjust some operation that should not continue when our activity is not in the foreground. Okay, so suppose for an example, you are playing a YouTube video on YouTube app, and that means all of your focus is on the video, right? But what happens when you press on the home button? So you will just lose focus from your activity. So at that time you have to pause the video, and that means there is a possibility that you will return. So you will not stop the video, you will just pause it. So this is the example of on pause. Or suppose any another example can be when you are displaying some animation on the top of one activity, so you should stop, or we can say pause the activity that is in the background. So there is a one layer above the other. So this is one of the example where you can just pause your animation or pause something else when your activity is not on the focus. And also when we are in the pause state, any lifecycle aware component tied to the activity lifecycle will receive the on pause event. Okay, but here also remember that thing, that on pause execution is very brief and does not necessarily afford enough time to perform save operation. For this reason, you should not use on pause to save application or user data, make network calls, or execute any database transaction. Such work may not complete before the method completes. Instead, what you can do is you should perform heavy load operations during on stop. So after this on pause method, we have this on stop. So suppose you want to save your data, so you should not do it in this on pause method, because this method is also very quick. You can do it in on stop method. So after this on pause, we can either enter this resume state again, or we can move to this stopped state. So there is a stopped state here, and that will just call on stop. So now let me just talk about this. So let me just override it here. So you can just write here on stop, and I should also write here this. So what is this on stop method? So when your activity is no longer visible to the user, it has entered the stopped state, and the system invokes the on stop call, and that's where the system will invoke this on stop callback. So this may occur, for example, when a newly launched activity covers the entire screen. So the system may also call on stop when the activity has finished running and is about to be terminated. When your activity moves to the stop state, any lifecycle aware component tied to the activity lifecycle will receive the on stop event. So in this on stop method, the app should release or adjust resources that are not needed when the app is not visible to the user. For example, as I had said, after this method, that means our activity will destroy, or it can also restart. So there is no going back to a resume state, right? So that means you can just save your state, or if you want to perform some database operation, you can also do it here in this method. That will just save your UI state or some data that you have in your application. Also remember that thing, when your activity enters the stopped state, the activity object is kept resident in memory. It will maintain all state and information, but is not attached to the window manager. So when the activity resumes, the activity recalls this information. So that means we will not go back to this resume state, but we will just go back to this on start state, and we will not create our activity again. And this is the difference between this stopped state and this pause state. And there may be a possibility, if you have a low memory, then your app can be also killed. So that time you have to create your activity again. So here you don't need to reinitialize components that were created during any of the callback method leading to the resumed state. So the system also keep track of the current state for each view object in the layout. So if the user enter text in an edit text widget, like we also did here, so we had a edit text, like we saw here in the previous example, that we will not use the state of our edit text, and when we were rotating our screen, so we will just hit the on stop, and after that we will just resume. So this was the task of our on stop method, and that's why we were not losing our state. So this was the thing that we were just facing here. Let me also show you again one more time. So here I will just enter some value here. Suppose I am writing here Sagar, and in the next edit text I am writing here Malhotra. And after that, when I'm calculating, so this will be our text, and this edit text will just retain our configuration changes. So let me just do this. I will just rotate my device, and here you can see these edit texts are sustaining the configuration changes, but not about this text. So the text was just released, and the text inside these edit texts are still here. And also, if you want the text, so what you can do is you can just check these methods on save instance state, as we just learned today. So you can just save your result text here, and you can just get it back on restore state. So this is the method. So save here your text, and you can retrieve it back here. So we don't need that method now. We will just learn a very efficient method to save your UI state, and you will definitely survive these configuration changes, or even when your application is dying. So when your operating system is destroying your application, so you will still survive that, and you will just get back your UI state. So we will also learn about that, how you can do that. And after this on stop method, if we are not going to get back to our on start, then that means we will just destroy our activity. So our activity is finishing, and we are going to destroy it. So this on destroy is called before the activity is actually destroyed. And uh, and the, and that is also obvious. If our activity is destroyed, then how can we just call any method of the activity? But how the system can know that either we can just return to our activity, or this time we have to just destroy it? So that is the decision of our system. So this is because of the activity is finishing due to the user completing dismissing the activity, or due to the finish method being called. So this was the method that we were calling here. So when we were creating our intent, after the start activity we were calling finish activity, and after this method, now our operating system definitely know that this activity will be destroyed, so it will just call this, and that means now it will not restart this time, and we are just removing that from the backstack. Okay, So this was the first case when our system will call this on destroy. And what is the second case? The system is temporarily destroying the activity due to their configuration changes. So if the activity is actually finishing, on destroy is the final lifecycle callback the activity receives. The on destroy method is called at the result of a configuration change. So when we were rotating our device, so we will also reach this state, and the system immediately creates a new activity instance and then call the on create method. So after this, we will just not shut down our activity, and what we will do, we will just call this on create method back. And after that, we will just create the new instance of our activity in a new state, in a new UI. So the on destroy method should release all the resources that you may have initialized in on create method. So I hope now you understand all these lifecycle methods, and these are very important topic according to also interviews. So also remember that one thing, that the system never kills an activity directly to free up memory. Instead, it kills the process in which the activity runs, destroying not only the activity but everything else running in the process as well. So we just learned that our activity is like a Linux process, and that means when our system needs memory, so it will just destroy the whole process. Okay. So also remember one more thing, that when we were using our own save instance state, so we were just saving something inside our bundles, right? But you don't have to save everything in this bundle, and that is because if you are saving a lot of memory, then your application will just crash, that will just say out of memory. So we can only use this bundle to save our some state of UI, and that can be like this text or something else, but you cannot just save a list of all your data in the UI. You just cannot do that. You can only save here lightweight objects. Okay. And after this, we just learned about how we can navigate between activities. So if you want to start any activity, suppose for some result, suppose you want to open camera and you want the result, or suppose you want to open the gallery in your device, so you can just do this thing by using an intent. And what we can do is we can use this method start activity for result, as we just learned about this. So we can just use this method, but I already told you that this method is deprecated now. So we also have to pass here some number, and you can see this method is deprecated. And instead, you can just see here, we can just use another method, something like this: register for activity result or start activity for result. So don't worry, this method will still work. And if you want to get the result, then you can just get it in this on activity result method. Okay. So here you will just get your result. So this step is not the part of this video, and we'll just learn that thing some another day. So now we learned about all the lifecycle callback methods, and let me also show you one thing, that there is a corresponding destructive method for every constructive method. So if you are writing anything in your own create and you are initializing something, so don't forget to also close that thing in on destroy. So this on create is corresponding to on destroy method, and after this on create, our activity will be created. And after this, we will just enter the started state, and now we will just call this on start method. And for this on start, we have the corresponding on stop. So if you are starting anything in on start, you have to stop that thing in on stop method. And after this started state, we will just reach this resume state, and we are going to call this on resume. So for this on resume, we have this on pause. And you can also see here this thing, that our activity will have focus only in this resume state, and when we are closing our phone or when we are pressing home button, so our activity is not visible. So that will be our this whole state. And after this, your configuration changes will be in this thing, and your app will be destroyed after this whole. Okay. So I hope now you understand everything about this activity lifecycle, and now we will just see how our activity is working according to these lifecycle callback methods, and we are going to see all of these methods in work. So let me just implement all of these methods here. So I will just comment this whole thing first, note this line, and I will just override all methods here. So first of all, after this on create, I have my on start method, on start, and after this on resume. Okay, not on restart, on resume, and also here. So after this on resume, I have my on pause method. After this on stop, and at last on destroy. So first of all, if you want to know that this method is called first, and after that this method, that means if you want to know the execution, then what we can do is we can just show here a toast message. So toast message is nothing, just a pop-up in your screen. So you will just gently see a message in your screen that this thing is happening. So what we can do is, first of all, we will just create a toast inside this on create. So let me just do it here, toast, and this is our android.widget package, and after that dot, you can just see this make test. So first of all, we have to pass here a context. So what is the context? We can just pass this. So this is now an activity, and we are passing a context of our activity. So there is a whole different concept for all these context, and we will just learn that thing later. But for a very brief, you can just see, consider this thing as an environment. That means we have to tell the toast about our environment. And after this, you can just hover here, and we have to pass here a char sequence. That means we have to pass here a string that will be shown in our screen. So I will just say here on create, and here also I have to tell here the duration. So this time I have to define the duration. That means for how long we have to show this toast. So we have to show it for a short time. So I cannot just pass here this. So this will be not a possible value. I have to pass here this toast dot this length short or long. So I will just pass here short. And after this, I have to call here this dot show method. So this is the method of our toast class, and using only this line, we will just show a message in our screen. And let me just copy this whole thing. First of all, let me just run this thing, and we will just see this on create pop-up. So our activity is running now, and you can just see here we created our on create pop-up, on create toast message. And now let me just copy this thing to all these methods. So after this, we will just call this created a new toast on start, and I will write here on start. And let me just copy and paste it here on resume. After this, on pause. So how can we see on pause? When we are closing our application, you will just see all of these toast message. So after this, we have this on top, and at last on destroy. So let's just see if we can see all of these dots toast or not. So first of all, on create, and after that on start, and on resume, and that's it. We are in the resumed state. So we just saw all these after some delay, and that is because we are first showing our toast. So first this toast is shown completely for this much duration, and after this we will just see this on start and on resume. So we just saw these three toasts, and when I'm pressing the home button, so you can see on pause. So now our activity is on pause and also stopped. Okay, let me just do something else here. When I am back, so on start and on resume. So as I told you, corresponding to our on stop, we have our on start, and corresponding to our on pause, we have this on resume. And now we are again in the resume state. So when I'm pressing on this calculate button, so suppose I am using here an intent, or let me just rotate my device. So what happened when we are rotating our device? So let me just do it. And on stop, on pause, on stop, and on destroy, on create, on start, on resume. So that means we are calling all of these methods when we are rotating our device. So our activity will be completely destroyed and will be completely built again. So we are not going to close our activity. So we are not going to reach this state. So we will not shut down our activity, but we will destroy and we will recreate everything. Okay. So this is the thing that you can just show. You can just see using this toast message inside your application. And let me just do it again. So what it will call, first of all, on pause, then stop, then destroy, and after that create, start, resume. Let me just confirm. On pause, on stop, on destroy, and create, start, and resume. So that's it. And let me just check what happened on an intent. So when we are leaving our application, and when we are leaving our activity and we are moving to a next activity, so then what will happen? So let me just remove this thing here, and let me just create an intent to our second activity. So this is our edit text 1, and I am passing here the data and showing it in my second activity. Okay, so let me just see, and I am also finishing. Suppose I am also finishing. Finish. So this will just destroy, and if I am not, then let me just see first, and after that we will also implement this, and we will just see the another output. So as you can also see, on create, on start, on resume. So here we have to wait for a very long time when we have to see this toast message. So there is a better way to do this debugging. So this is called as debugging, when we are checking the state of our application, whether we are in the this state or in this state. So we can just do this thing by using this logcat. So logcat is nothing. Okay, this thing is a little scary, but don't worry, this is nothing complex here. This is just like a output window, and this will just show us the status of our application, that this thing is happening, this thing is happening, and nothing much more. So next we will just learn about this logcat, and we will just use all of these things inside our logcat using our log messages. So first of all, I will just enter here some data, and I will press back. This keyboard should be closed, and when I'm clicking on this calculate button, so when I am moving to my next activity, so what will happen? So we should probably pause our activity, and let me just know that think about it, if we are going to stop our activity or not, and you will just see. And let me just tell you, if we are moving to our next activity, so we are losing all the focus from this activity, so that means we are going to stop, obviously. So let me just click here on pause, and on stop also here. So you can see, if we are losing the all focus from our activity, so we will also stop. And when I'm pressing back, so first of all, I will on start my activity, and after that I will resume again. So that's it, on start and on resume. So now let me just tell you about log messages and what is this logcat. So instead of just doing this thing, so I am writing everywhere these toast messages. What I can do is, I can just do this log dot t and some tag here, suppose this tag, and after that some string value. So this will just return me nothing in my application, but I can just use this thing to see my result in this logcat. So this is like an output window, and you can just consider this log.d as my print statement. So now we will just learn what is a log and a logcat. So first of all, at the bottom here, you can just see there is a logcat option. You have to open it, and here you will just see there are a lot of messages here. So what are these? These are the status of your application, and let me just tell you everything here. So first of all, here at the top you have this plus button, so you can just open here a new log window. So after this, here this is the option to select your emulator. You may be using multiple emulators in this Android Studio, like I also have here two emulators here. So you can just run multiple apps, multiple emulators that may be using same devices. Suppose you are creating some messaging app, so you can just open two emulators, and you can just chat between them. Okay, so then how can you debug status of your app? Then you can just use these two logcats, and here you can also select your emulator, or if you are using here a physical device, then you can also select it from here. And after that we have this window. So here you can apply your tags. Here this will represent our query that we want to perform on this log messages. So what we can do is, we can apply here this multiple type of query options. So suppose I have this tag that will just represent our tag. You can also see here the suggestion. So suppose I want a tag of, let me just select here this tally network scheduler. So tag colon network scheduler, and you will just see all the messages that have this tag network scheduler. And this is our package. So this is our one query tag that we can use. And after that we also have this package, and let me just write here package, and I can just check here mine. So this will just see me all the messages that are from this application, that is mine application. Okay, so this is our application name, com.example.my application. And if I am not selecting this, then you can see just all messages that are either from this package or from this package. And this is because we are calling multiple applications, right? We are using here multiple APIs, and these are here library APIs. So we are using this Android X dot this app compat, we are using this, we are using this. So there will be statuses of also these applications. So we are going to see all the status of all the packages. So if you don't want to, then you can apply here package colon mine. And here this filtering option, you can just choose or history. So you can just get all your history from this tab. And if you want to delete it, you can just press, okay, not press, you can just select any of it, and you can just shift and delete. So that's how you can just delete this history. So let me just select here package mine, and here are these messages. So what is this? This is our level. What is this W? What is this? What is this D? What is this I? So I will just tell you about all of these, and these are our actual messages. Okay, and here at the left, this is our date and time. So after this, we have one more query parameter, and that is their process. So we can just define here some specific process that we are running. So you can see, so you can just see this is our system process, and you can also define here some another thing if you want. And after that, we can also check here for some specific message. So message means that will match against the message part of the log entry. So we can just type here this. So it will just get on me all the messages that contains this. So after this message, we have also this level. So level, and you can just see all the messages are here that are of debug level. So there are more levels. Let me just write here warning, or we can also write here verbose, or we can also write here error. So all these are errors here. Okay, so this level tag will just match me the specified or higher Severlog level of messages. So if I am writing here error, so there is no other type that is higher than error. And if I am writing here debug, so debug means that I am going to see all the messages that are either for debugging or for higher than that. So this warning has a higher level than this debug, and error has a very high level. Okay, and the lowest level is of verbose. So I am going to see all of them. So I will just see warning, error, debug, and this I means info. And after that, let me just show you one more thing. So there is one more query parameter, that is age. So age, and after that, so this will match if the entry timestamp is recent. Values are specified as a number followed by a letter specifying the time unit. S for second, M for minutes. So suppose I am writing here 5M. So this will just give me all the messages that are 5 minutes before. So you can just see what is the time now. So 2:58, and you can just see these are all messages that are 5 minutes or later. Okay. So you can just use these query parameters to check all your log messages. So I will just check package mine, and after that there is a star option here. So you can just star your query. If you are writing some big query, then you can also save it from here. And after that, there is this delete option. That means you can just clear this logcat. And after this, there is this option. That means we have to scroll to the latest log message. So using this option, we can just move to the later one. And after this, there is this option that will just wrap up my content in this screen. So that means you can just see here we can do this horizontal screen, and this is your very long message. So if you want to wrap this thing up, so you can just choose this option here. So now this thing is looking a little messy, and I just like this view. So after this, you can also take a screenshot here, or you can also record a video. So that's it. And you can also split here this thing. That means you can just see two alternative log messages, and you can also right click and clear this logcat, or you can just close this. So there can be also different options. You can just configure your logcat from here. So this is our standard view, and that means you can just see something like this. And if you want to change it to compat view, so here you can just see the time, here the level, and just the log messages. Okay, so you can also customize this thing. What things do you want to use? So you can just use here this modify view. I just like the standard view, so that is why we are going to use this. So this was all about our logcat. And let me tell you one more thing, that if you are applying here multiple query parameters, so you can just use here logical operators like this or, this and something else. Also here you can use this is. So is crash. So if there is some crashing, then we can also check it here, or I can also use it here is, or I can also provide here stack trace. So you can just see this thing. So this was all about our logcat, and let me just tell you about log. So what is a log message? So you can just access this by writing log. So log is a Java class that is from android.util package. So here you can see, and let me just deep dive into this. So we can just control and left click, and here you can see this is a Java final class, and that have these 5 fields, sorry 6. So first of all, we can just write log.a, that means this is a assertion message, and log.d means this is a debug message. So let me just show you by doing this. log.d. So you can see this is a debug message. We can just use this method and pass here some parameters. So this will just show me a debug message in my logcat. So this is just like printing something, and if I want to print something on my own create triggered, so then I can just use this log message. So I can just write here some tag. So normally we can just use this my activity name as a tag, and after that I can just write here message on create triggered. Okay, and this was our log.d. So this will just represent me a debug icon, debug level, and after that we also have log.I. So I means this is a info. Let me just copy all of this. Log.I. So this is an info message, and after that we also have log.e. So this is a error message, and log dot after that we also have verbose, and log.v means verbose, and this have the lowest level, verbose have the lowest level, and this e have the highest level. Okay, just remember that thing. And we also have w, yeah, this is for warning. And after that we also have one more thing here, that is a wtf. So that means what a terrible failure. So let me just check it here. They are not writing here the definition, but don't worry, I personally never use this thing, but you can just use others. So here are these 5 methods that we can use to represent the level of our log message. There is not a method for our this log dot assert. Okay, and now you know what they represent. They just represent the level of your log message. And let me just run my application, and you are gonna see these log messages. So we are gonna see all of these 6, and using our query we can just modify, sort any of them. If I want to only see the debug message, though, I can also apply here some query, and same for other things. So they are showing here also toast messages. So let me just remove it. So before removing, let me just check here. So package mine, and okay, you can, okay, I think I should apply here only this. So I will just write here tag colon my activity, and you can see here. So this is showing me all the tags that have this my activity tag. So there are 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, and first of all we are seeing this d, that means this is a debug level, and after that info, this error, so error is in the red color, and after that verbose, and after that warning. So as you can see we are triggering this on create. So now let me just remove all these toast messages, and I will just apply here this debug, because we are debugging our application. So let me just apply here this debug messages, and this is here on start, start, and after this I will apply here on resume. Here it will be on pause, so now let me just run my application again, and I can now just see all the log messages. So these are for my previous application run, and let me clear them. So first of all you can also see these things, that I am just getting this when my application is starting. So it will just show you that this process is started, and it is also showing here the time, package name here, that this is my application package. So first I triggered these 3 functions, that is here on create, on start, and on destroy. And when I'm clicking on this button, so I can now just see after on resume I have this on pause and on stop. So that means my first activity is stopped now. And when I'm pressing on back, so on start and on resume. So this is very easier than writing a toast message here. And let me also rotate my screen, and here you can see after on resume I just triggered on pause, and now my activity is stopped and also destroyed, and I am recreating my activity. So let me just do it again, and I will press the home button. So now my activity is in the resumed state, and when I'm pressing home, so it is now paused, and now it is also stopped. And you can just see my activity is not destroyed. So that means when I'm going back, so it will just resume again. But if I am just destroying my activity, so it is stopped, and I am removing it from the recent tab. So as you can see, now it is destroyed, and process end. So this is a very amazing thing about our log messages. And let me also tell you that there is one easy handy thing that we can use. Instead of writing these log messages, we can just use our Timber library. So Timber is the name of our open source library that we can use to write efficient log messages. So let me just show you how we can use them. So I will just write here Timber dependency, and here this is the one that we are going to use, jquarton/timber. So this is a GitHub repository that we are going to get from for our dependencies. So first of all, as you can see here, a logger with a small and extensible API which provide utility on top of Android normal log classes. So this is just a wrapper around our log classes, and here you can just scroll down, and here, so for downloading, you can just see we have to add this to our repository. So repository will be this Maven Central, and let me just tell you, this is already added inside our Gradle, this settings.gradle. And you can see for our dependency resolution management inside our repositories, we have this Maven Central, and this is the old way, and we don't have to do this thing. So I will just close this settings.gradle, and after this we have this dependency. So we have to use this line inside our dependency block. And where is the dependency block? So this will be inside our build.gradle module. So you can just see this is our second file, module my application.app. So here at the end of this file, we have this dependency block, and all the dependencies, all the libraries that you want to import will be added in this dependency block. Okay, so we have to use this implementation. So I will just copy this line here, and I will paste it here, and this is for our Timber. And let me now just see, you can just see there is a sync now option. For some of the libraries, you also have to install the plugins, so you can also do it here. And if they are saying that you want to do it in the project version, then you can just open this build or Gradle project file, and you can add this plugin here. So as you can see, now our Gradle sync is finished, and let me close both of these files. And instead of writing here this log, I can just use here, instead of this, you can also see there is a warning now. So I can just over here and using log instead of Timber. So now our compiler know that Timber is installed. So now I can just write here replace. So I can now just alt and enter. So here you can just import it. So now this Timber is imported also in this file. So as you can see here, now we are using Timber library, and you can just remove this tag, and there is no need to do this thing. So let me just run it now, and we are going to see the exact same output in our Logcat. So this is just a helping hand. You can also use log messages, and there is nothing changed here. So I can just write here Timber, and I can just remove this tag. This is unnecessary now. Let me remove this from here. We'll also write here Timber, and I will just remove all these tags. So when I'm trying to use this Logcat, so you can see I am just getting this on start and not this on created, because I am not specifying here the tag of this my activity. And let me just remove this. So I will write here package mine, and here let me just show you. First of all, close the emulator, and let me just show you on start is triggered here, and before this our on create should be triggered. Okay, I think I cannot find it. Let me just rerun the application. So here our application is running. Okay, it is now open, and inside our Logcat, okay, we are not getting here any messages from Timber, and that is because of we are not defining our application class. We have to define that this Timber will be our default logging library. So for this reason, we have to define here application class. So let me just create here a Kotlin class, my application, So this will be our application class, and even this will run before our main activity. So first of all, this will be our application, and let me just extend it from application, and this is a constructor call. So I should also define this application inside this application tag. So the name of this application will be this file. Okay, you are gonna also need this application file when you are using your dependency injection. So we will also learn about that. This application class is just the instance of your application, and inside here we have to define if we are using this timber library. So here we have to define on create of our application. What we will do is we have to write here some code, and that is here this. So let me just import everything and this. So if we are doing this, then on create we have to define that if our build config is of debugging, so that means when we are debugging, so build config is defined in this build.gradle file. So here you can see this is our build type, and this is our default configuration. So we can just define our build config here. So in my application, what we are saying that if our build configuration is of debug type, then that means we have to implant the Timber library, and this will be our default debugging library. So let me just Control Alt and Enter. So this will just format our code, and after this, now our Timber is implanted, and let me just run this. So now we are gonna see all these Timber messages. Now our application is installing, and we can just see this Logcat, and let me just scroll down so I can just use this option. So here we are definitely gonna see on create method. Okay, what is this error? Just ignore this, and package should be mine, package mine, and here inside this you can just see on create triggered, on start triggered, and by default our tag is of the main activity that we were previously defining here. So this time we don't have to define the tag, and for Timber by default the tag will be of our activity name. Here you can just see we are getting the same tags as we were getting previously, and if I'm clicking on the button here, so at the bottom we will see all other tags. Okay, so that is it for today, everyone. And in this video, we just learned about activity lifecycle and how you can create now multi-screen apps and how you can share data between them. So after this video, we will be learning about fragments. And for a basic insight, fragment is just a reusable part of your activity, and it is much better to use a fragment than an activity. So I will see you in the next video.